Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video on the Gooners and Gloves Podcast channel. In today's video, it's going to be the 77th Gooners and Gloves Podcast, and I'm going to be giving you guys my thoughts on Arsenal's 2024-25 season. At the time of recording, there is still one more game to be played, which is Southampton away. However, with second place being, all but ours, and of course Champions League football being guaranteed, it's a game that doesn't really mean anything. So I think this is the perfect time to say goodbye to the 2024-25 season and head off into the 2025-26 season. Obviously, this is very special for me because I started this podcast back in October, and now here we are at the end of the season, and I'm still going strong, and that's thanks to all of your support. So I want to thank every single one of you who has supported me this season, and if you're new today, then welcome to the family, and hopefully you guys will join me for the 2025-26 season. I've got loads of plans for content in the 2025-26 season, so I hope you guys will continue to support me and will follow me into the 2025-26 season. So I thought it'd be fun to have a look back on the 2024-25 season and give my thoughts on every single competition that Arsenal played in. Now, I also did recently release a shorts which covers my 5 favorite wins of the 2024-25 season. So if you want to see an in-depth explanation of what my 5 favorite wins of this season were, please go check that shorts out. However, I thought it'd also be fun to do a podcast in shorts on the overall season. So giving my thoughts on every single competition and an overall score, and just kind of give my thoughts heading into next season, the 2025-26 season. So first, let's get started with the Champions League. Now, I think it's fair to conclude that the Champions League was Arsenal's biggest success of the 2024-25 season. Of course, we made the semi-final and had some, definitely some of our best wins within the Champions League. The first big highlight of the Champions League, of course, was finishing third in the group stage table, and this was a really good achievement because, we only finished just slightly below Barcelona and Liverpool, and obviously those are two of among the best teams in the world. Obviously, Barcelona, we know how incredible they've been this season, and Liverpool, of course, did lift the Premier League trophy. So certainly two very solid teams. So to be finishing in the same category as them and, finish above the likes of Real Madrid, Juventus, Man City, etc. was a really special feeling, and I think was a great moment. And obviously we had some really good wins and performances in the group stage. Obviously Monaco, Girona, Sporting Lisbon away, of course, was absolutely incredible, that 5-1 performance, and several other great performances, Dynamo Zagreb, etc. in the group stage. So I think the group stage was very solid. I think we really established ourselves, found our feet in Europe, and I just think we did so well. Obviously throughout the whole group stage we didn't lose a single game at home, which was certainly awesome. And the group stage was solid. We finished third, and I just think that was a really cool achievement by Mikel Arteta. Of course, Mikel Arteta only in his second ever Champions League season with Arsenal, obviously having come back to the Champions League in the 23-24 season. So for him to be finishing third in the group stage was certainly fantastic and really good going. Then obviously the round of 16 was absolutely incredible. We completely cruised our way through. PSV 7-1, which was just insane, by the way. 7-1, 7 goals scored in a game, the most ever goals scored in a European away knockout game. And then of course the 2-2 draw at home. So we went through 9-3 in the round of 16, and it was very nice to progress in the round of 16 in that fashion, especially obviously after what happened last year, where it was very nervy against Porto, losing the away leg, and obviously penalties for the home leg. So it was very nice to have a round of 16 which we just completely cruised our way through, so that was fantastic. Then of course we get to the quarter final, definitely the highlight of the season. We beat Real Madrid 5-1 on aggregate, absolutely incredible. 2 nights that no Arsenal fan will ever forget. Obviously 3-0 at the Emirates Stadium, by far the best night ever at the Emirates Stadium. We completely turned up. We smashed Real Madrid. Obviously Declan Rice with 2 absolute banger free kicks that will never be forgotten, and so many other cool moments in that game. And then we went to the Santiago Bernabeu. Everybody was talking about remontada and that we were going to bottle it, etc. So to go there, get the 2-1 win, Martinelli and Saka both scoring, was just a fantastic moment. So obviously that was great. But then obviously we do reach the semi-final, where it was heartbreak. We lost the first leg quite narrowly, only 1-0, although unfortunately we did concede in the opening 4 minutes. We lost that game narrowly, and then we went to PSG and we put so much pressure on, and we really tried our best, and we had so much XG, so many shots on target, especially in that first sort of 15-20 minutes. But Donnarumma was up to the task, the defense was up to the task, and PSG scored some fantastic goals and progressed through to the final. Obviously when I'm recording this, the final still hasn't happened, so I don't know if PSG are going to win it or not, but I think there was a lot of positives to take from the Champions League. I think we looked fantastic in it. I think we played some of our best football in the Champions League. Obviously, we progressed all the way through to the semi-final, which is only the 3rd time ever that Arsenal have done that, and is an improvement from last year, because last year we got knocked out in the quarter-final. So for that reason, I scored the Champions League as an 8 out of 10. Obviously, we were very close to the final, so I think an 8 out of 10 is fair. We played fantastic football in that competition, third in the group stage table, the win against PSV, the 5-1 against Real Madrid, and while, PSG did knock us out, it's not like we were pushovers, we weren't pushovers in that PSG game, and it could even be argued that with a striker, with a recognised striker, the result could have been very different, but we can't hold any grudges, we can't make excuses. The fact remains that PSG did eliminate us and are playing in the final that we wanted to be in, but in spite of that, I think it's a huge success and definitely can be built upon, and hopefully next season we can even go a step further and maybe go to the final, you know what I mean? So yeah, very proud of the Champions League campaign. I think it was a fantastic campaign from Arsenal, and definitely the highlight of the season for me was the making the semi-final of the Champions League. So for that reason, the Champions League gets a strong score, 8 out of 10, fantastic wins, and yeah, obviously Sporting 5-1, PSV 7-1, among others. It was just fantastic. So yeah, Champions League for me is without a doubt the biggest success of the season and scores as an 8 out of 10. Then let's move on to the Premier League. Now, I don't know if people are going to agree with me on this score, but honestly, this is my opinion. I've actually gone with a 7 out of 10. Now, I know some people are going to instantly look at that and think, oh, you guys finished second again, why are you scoring at 7? Like, that's ridiculous, etc. But honestly, I just think with all of the circumstances, second place is not that bad. Now, don't get me wrong, we don't want to be finishing second. Obviously, not for a second do I want to finish second. The ultimate aim is to lift that Premier League trophy that has obviously eluded us since 2004. However, this season, I really can't be too hateful on it, and especially with all of the circumstances. First of all, we have to address it. The injury crisis. People may call it an excuse, but the fact remains Arsenal had 27 injuries this season. We had, I don't know how many, like 6 or 7 different operations happen. Like, it was just insane. And we had some of our best players out, Saka out, Odegaard out, Gabriel out, Havertz out, Jesus, so on and so forth, and that definitely impacts it. And at multiple points, these guys were out in unison as well. I think at one point both Saka and Odegaard were out, and so on. So definitely that's the first big thing, injury crisis, and we've seen other teams with injury crisis who are, much lower than us in the table, such as Tottenham Hotspur. I know Tottenham Hotspur won the Europa League, but focusing purely on the Premier League for a second, Tottenham Hotspur did finish in 17th, and that's even with less injuries than us, I mean? Like, Tottenham also had a severe injury crisis, and they didn't even have as many as us. So this isn't like to hate on Tottenham or to hate on other teams. This is more to just give a representation of just how many injuries Arsenal actually dealt with this season and why that absolutely is a factor. Even the Newcastle game, many people were saying, oh, Isak was injured, the result could have been different, and that's one injury. So now imagine in our situation with all the different injuries, defensively, attacking wise, midfield, everywhere, definitely. The hamstring injuries in particular have been an absolute nightmare, and obviously I'm not saying that that's entirely just down to, bad luck. It's not only down to bad luck. It is true that Arteta does play players a lot, and that's something that does have to be addressed. Also, it's clear that we need to improve our rehabilitation programs with hamstrings, because hamstrings in particular seem to be the number one killer in our club. Saka got a hamstring injury, Havertz got a hamstring injury, Gabriel Martinelli got one, so everybody seems to be hit with them. I think Saliba now has one, so yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's a hamstring, so that's definitely something that has to be improved. Jesus, unfortunately, out for the whole season since January, but I mean like out for the rest of the season and going into next season with a very severe knee injury, so he probably won't be back till about like November. Tomiyasu has obviously really not seen many minutes at all. He's been out the whole season. Ben White obviously out for I think 10 weeks when he had to have an operation, so it's not the only factor, but it has to be addressed. 27 injuries is absurd, a lot of injuries. And that obviously is the first thing. Secondly, the red cards. These have to be addressed. Now, I'm not saying every single red card we got was unjust. Definitely not. There are some of them which were fair. I think the Saliba one against Bournemouth was fair. And I think the Miles Lewis-Skelly one against West Ham was fair. So I'm not saying that every single one of them was unfair, but I mean the Declan Rice red card against Brighton, the Leandro Trossard red card against Man City, the Miles Lewis-Skelly red card against Wolverhampton Wanderers, and so on is these definitely weren't fair. I'm not going to sit here and think they were just. I don't think they were just. That's my opinion. Some might disagree, but I think these sorts of red cards were unjust. I don't think they should have been red cards, and ultimately they're games that as a result we went on to draw because obviously we didn't have that solidity. So that's the next thing to consider. Obviously the VAR decisions, there's no disputing that there have been many controversial VAR decisions against Arsenal this season. I'm not saying Arsenal's the only team, but there is no denying we have had a lot of decisions go against us. So yeah, I think those are the key things. And also, of course, the final thing is not buying a striker in January. Obviously, that's on our own back, but I'm just saying it's still a reason why we struggled later on in the season. But yes, I understand that one's on our own back and we have to take accountability. But the point I'm trying to make is when you take into account everything I just said, all of those injuries, all of those red cards, the lack of a striker, the VAR decisions, keeping second place still in spite of all of those conditions is really not a bad thing. And I just really want to stress, I don't think we should be upset to the extent that we are. Obviously, we need to demand more. Of course we do. We don't want to finish second, but we really do have to take the context into account here. And I think taking all of that into account, the fact that Arteta's managed to maintain second place, I think is fantastic. And I think is definitely shows signs of positivity that we can take into next season. Now, there are some mistakes there that we need to learn from. We absolutely need to buy a striker in the summer. There's no disputing that. That needs to happen. And clearly we need to improve our injury rehabilitation programs. We need to improve player fitness, like upkeep of player fitness. So some of these things are on our own back, but some of them aren't, if you get what I mean. But basically the overarching point I'm trying to make here is the fact that every single one of these things have hit us all at once when we theoretically should be at our worst, if you get what I mean. We've still managed to maintain the same position as the last couple of seasons. Obviously 23-24 and 22-23 not having anywhere near as many injuries and red cards and VAR decisions and all that. And in spite of that, and thus us, theoretically having to be at our worst, we still managed to finish second place. So for that reason, that's why I've given the Premier League a 7 out of 10. I think with every single one of those circumstances, most other teams would have finished, mid-table or even lower. And we saw it already this season, teams finishing mid-table or lower. So the fact that Arteta has managed to remain second place still and ultimately at some points provide a bit of a title challenge, I think all in all means that actually he's had a decent year. Obviously the draws can't be ignored. The draws are absolutely a fair point. Losses aren't too bad, only 4 overall, which definitely isn't terrible. However, the draws, I think it's like, I don't know how many is, let me just check the table real quick. It's not a good sign that I have to actually check the table to see how many there are, but I think, is it 14, I think? Sorry, I probably should check this before the video, but let me just have a quick look at the table here and see how many draws we have, because to be fair, it is an absurd amount. We have, 14 draws, which obviously isn't great. And that's before we even play Southampton. So hopefully that doesn't become 15. But yeah. So all in all, obviously we want more. However, given the circumstances, the red cards, the injuries, the suspensions, the VAR decisions, the lack of a striker, I think Arteta managing to maintain second place and show that consistency is really good going. And I think is absolutely puts us in good stead going into next season. So for that reason, I have gone with a 7 out of 10. Up next, we've got the Carabao Cup, another semi-final. This was the other semi-final that we reached this season, and obviously this one is a bit of a mixed bag. Obviously, on the way to the semi-final, we were comfortable. We didn't really struggle too much, though that being said, the run wasn't particularly difficult. We faced the likes of Bolton Wanderers and, Preston North End. Crystal Palace was decently challenging, but, we still managed to get through it. There were some really good highlights in the Carabao Cup, namely Gabriel Jesus' hat-trick. That was really cool to see. Obviously, Gabriel Jesus had been struggling with his finishing for a little while, so seeing him get a hat-trick and just look so happy absolutely made me smile. And that's why I was so gutting that, mere weeks later he went on to get his knee injury, because when he got that knee injury, he was really starting to find his stride and he was really starting to score a lot. So it felt so devastating that he got that knee injury. But that Carabao Cup hat-trick was a fantastic performance from him, and then he followed that up later in the week with more goals against Palace. Ethan Ranieri's performances against both Preston North End and also against Bolton Wanderers were really cool as well. I think Ethan Ranieri smashed it in both of those games, and obviously we know what a fantastic player Ethan Ranieri is, and Miles Lewis-Skelly, and to be fair, Miles Lewis-Skelly did well in these games. So yeah, this is when they really started to be trusted more with first team minutes, and it was just cool to see Ethan Ranieri smash it in both of those games. However, we do have to talk about the semi-final elimination against Newcastle. Now, what makes it not as bad is Newcastle did go on to win the trophy, so at least we got eliminated by the team that won it. However, the manner that we got eliminated in can't be ignored. Now, obviously, when the first leg happened, our squad was arguably at the most depleted it had been, and this isn't necessarily an excuse, because end of the day, Newcastle turned up and did a good job. I can't hate on them. I'm not hating on them. End of the day, you can only play what's put in front of you, and that's what Newcastle did, and credit to them. They smashed it, so don't think this is me discrediting Newcastle, but to be fair, we were severely injury ridden when Newcastle visited the Emirates. Not only that, but obviously The morale was quite low just from disappointing league results and everything of that description. And Newcastle rocked up at the Emirates, beat us 2-0. I think it was Isak and, is it Gordon, I think? Isak and Gordon both scored. Gordon hit the Henry celebration, and it was just a really sad night. Losing 2-0 at the Emirates like that just felt so devastating, especially because, we'd barely been losing there. And then, as we know, later in the week, we lost to Man United in the FA Cup, which I will get to in a second. So yeah, that was the first leg. However, about a month later, the second leg rolled around, and I'm not going to lie, Newcastle were in quite poor form heading into this, and I do think our belief started to come back. We started to think that maybe something could happen. But sadly, the squad just completely didn't turn up, and it's still, among the worst performances that Arsenal put on in this campaign was that second leg against Newcastle. Just completely battered from pillar to post, completely outplayed. It was only a few days before the players' Dubai trip. It was clear their heads were already in Dubai, and it was just really disappointing to see them go out like that. So it was a very sour end to a trophy that I think we definitely would have had a good chance in. We saw how poor Liverpool were in that final, so I do think that had we made that final, we really could have given Liverpool a good game and potentially gone on to lift the trophy. So that's why I've given this one a 6, because while making it to a semi-final is obviously good, and it was our first Carabao Cup semi-final in a while, it really feels like this is the one that got away, if you get what I mean. Obviously the Champions League is the Champions League, fair enough, it's a hard one to win. The Premier League, we dealt with all the injuries that I talked about and everything else that I talked about, but it really felt like the Carabao Cup's the one that got away. This is the one that really feels like we really could have won, and to go out like that against Newcastle in the semi-final, 4-0 on aggregate, just really put a sour taste in Arsenal fans' mouths, and unfortunately was just not great. So a 6 out of 10, because obviously they did make the semi-final, so I can't sit here and say it's below a 5, because at the end of the day they did get to the semi-final, but to lose the way that we did against Newcastle was just not great. And obviously Newcastle then went on to lift the trophy, and I really do feel that if we'd have made that final, we would have had a fantastic chance of lifting a trophy. So that's the Carabao Cup. And finally, we move on to something that probably is the only thing that can truly be considered a failure this season, and that is the FA Cup. I mean, there's not much to say here. We went out in the first round for a second straight season, so 1 out of 10. I mean, what can I say? Obviously, I can't say 0 because we did play in it, but I can't say anything more than a 1 because we got eliminated in the first round. And, that Man United FA Cup loss is still among the most painful losses that we had this season. We obviously know how horrible Man United are. They just lost the Europa League final. They're likely going to finish 16th or 17th. So the fact that we actually went out to them at home, not only that, but when they were down to 10 men as well, was just really, really, really just not great. It was a super painful result to take. They went down to 10 men. The referee had given us some favourable decisions. United were obviously in really poor form. We'd beaten them in the league only about a few weeks prior. So it really, really, this stung a lot. I'm not going to lie. It's definitely up there. Honestly, it could even be the most painful result of the season. I'm not gonna lie. That Man United loss was just so painful. So for that reason, the FA Cup, I've got to be fair, it's 1 out of 10. What more can I say? Our FA Cup performances in recent years have just been so poor, and sadly, this was just yet another early elimination. So this is the biggest improvement we have to make next season. I want to see us actually getting far in the FA Cup, because it's really starting to get annoying to just watch us get eliminated early. I know we didn't get a great draw, and I know for the last couple of years we haven't had great draws, but listen, whether you get the good draw early on or you get it later on, you're still going to get it at some point. You can't go through the whole FA Cup process without getting a hard game. So just because we got it first, it doesn't mean that we should now use that as an excuse as, oh, well, we got eliminated. No, we were in our own backyard, we were at home, we'd already beaten Man United, they were in really poor form, and we just didn't turn up, unfortunately. We did miss an absurd amount of chances in that game, there's no question about it. Our XG was among the highest we've had all season, so it wasn't all bad, but obviously to miss that many chances and then to lose on penalties, and, David Raya, who we know has, last year against Porto, smashed it on penalties, just completely and utterly was not good in the penalty shootout. So yeah, the FA Cup, definitely a failure. We have to say it how it is. Obviously, Champions League, Premier League, Carabao Cup, there were definitely good signs there, but, the FA Cup was a failure. We just have to be honest with it. Knocked out in the first round to a 10-man Man United at home. Yeah. So that brings me to the end of my analysis of the different competitions, meaning that my overall season score is 5.5 out of 10, and the way I've done that is I've taken the mean scores of all of those scores that I said. So 8 plus 7 plus 6 plus 1 gives us 22. 22 divided by 4 gives us 5.5. So 5.5 out of 10. Obviously that FA Cup 1 out of 10 massively drags this down. However, all in all, not a bad season. I don't think it's been a bad season. End of the day, 2 semi-finals, second place, all while, just dealing with the most amount of injuries that we ever have, the most amount of red cards, and just basically the most amount of bad circumstances. And despite that, we still got 2 semi-finals, we still got second place, so definitely there's a lot of positivity to build on there. As mentioned before, a massive highlight of the season, we're seeing the progression of both Ethan Nwaneri and also Miles Lewis-Skelly, 2 absolutely brilliant players who have just continued to smash it, and they've been so good. And some of my favorite moments from them, obviously Ethan Nwaneri's goal against Man City, and also Miles Lewis-Skelly's goal against Man City and doing the Haaland celebration. That was obviously awesome. Miles Lewis-Skelly's assist for Mikel Merino in the Champions League game against Real Madrid. Nwaneri's fantastic goals against multiple teams, including obviously Bolton Wanderers, Preston North End. I think, was it Leicester or some other team? I remember he scored an amazing goal against some other team. I don't quite remember which one it was, but I do definitely remember him scoring a good goal against another team. So yeah, fantastic to see those players flourish, and those 2 are so good. I mean, they've both practically turned themselves into first team contenders, which is just so good. We obviously have Max Dowman coming up as well, and he's looking to be a serious talent, and it sounds like Mikel Arteta is actually going to be taking him on the preseason tour, which is really good to see. And it sounds like Max Dowman is actually going to start competing for first team minutes next season, which is just really encouraging. Max Dowman, obviously an absolute talent in his own right, and clearly Mikel Arteta really rates him. So that brings me to the end of this review. So heading into the 2025-26 season, obviously, as mentioned before, we need to sign a striker. That's absolutely a certainty. We obviously want to be signing a striker. We've also got tons of winger options that we're currently looking at, Rodrigo and Mbumo, Nico Williams, Lookman, just tons of options. Rafael Leao, there's literally so many options. Like, I will make a video on the wingers eventually, but I just think because there's so many options and nothing is concrete right now, it's just really hard to talk about. Like, obviously with the strikers, like, it was pretty concrete. But yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this. As mentioned before, if you want to know what my 5 favourite Arsenal wins of the season were, please go check out the short that I uploaded about this. I'm really proud of that short. I worked really hard on it, so I hope you guys enjoy it. I also made a short about this video as well, delivering the same information, but obviously just the scores. So please let me know down below if you agree with my scores. Do you think I've been fair? Do you think I've been generous? Do you think I've been harsh? Please let me know. All of your comments are much appreciated. And yeah, how are we feeling for the 2025-26 season? Obviously, I'm absolutely buzzing. End of the day, look, this is my club. Through thick and thin, I love Arsenal. I will always support Arsenal. They're my club for life, through thick and thin. We may not have won anything this season. We may have seen Tottenham Hotspur win something. But you know what? I back this club all the way. I, of course, am Arteta in. That's something I forgot to mention, but I'm sure you guys already know that. I'm absolutely Arteta in, and I think I've covered some of the reasons quite well in the video. But yeah, have a great day. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll continue to make videos throughout the summer. I'll cover the preseason games. I'll obviously keep talking about transfer news as they arise. But without further ado, thank you guys so much for joining me this season. I really appreciate it. I'm not actually going to make a video about the Arsenal-Southampton game. So yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me this season. I'll still be making videos in the preseason. However, thank you for everybody who watched every single one of my videos in the preseason. I really appreciate it. And I'll catch you guys with another podcast soon. Bye bye.